So fantastic turnout, and thanks very much for inviting me. It's not the first time I've spoken here, and that's because this is known as a centre locally where people organise things and make a stand on things that really matter. And once again, you've done that here tonight, and clearly you're going to go forward doing that. So I feel really proud to be, very grateful to be here, and I just want to bring the solidarity greetings of the National Union of Teachers here. I'm here with the agreement of my General Secretary, so I'm here officially representing 350,000 teachers all around the country. And although they may not yet know a lot about this, I'm here tonight to listen and to make sure that I go back as instructed and share with my contacts and through the structures of the union what is happening and try and talk about what we can do to support the campaign for justice in this issue. We're also just joined with another union, so we're about to become even bigger, and I will also take this issue into the rest of our union, the National Education Union. As the NUT, we've had a long, proud history of taking up international questions, and that isn't something always that unions are prepared to do. Sometimes unions just want to focus on their own members, but as the National Union of Teachers, we believe that international solidarity is part of being a good educator, because if you can't be in connection with what's going on around the world, how can you really teach our young people? And we're not afraid of taking on hard questions. I'm sure many of you would know that we've taken up the question of Palestine quite strongly. We've asked some very hard questions, and we've been challenged about that. But we think that what is happening there and what is happening here now is wrong, and we are not afraid to say that, and we will keep saying that. So we are, I'm here in support, but as I say, I'm also here listening. I know a little bit about this. I've heard little waverings about it, but as other speakers have said for too long, this is a situation that has been silenced, and I realised today when I was reading some articles about this how little I knew, or actually what I thought I knew about the Rohingya actually is completely wrong. So I've been educating myself, and I will certainly continue to do that, and I think we all need to do that. It's clear that Britain has a historic responsibility in what is happening here, and for that reason, if no other reason, for that reason alone, we have a duty to take this issue up and to make our government take action. But we also have a present day obligation. When we have a Nobel Peace Prize winner, we talk about the Nobel Peace Prize as though it matters. If the holder of that prize is a traitor to those kind of, to what that's supposed to mean, how does that prize mean anything? How can we talk to our young people about what these prizes mean? It's a bit like the British values. We talk a lot about British values and what our young people must do and how they must behave and how they can be great British citizens. And if our British values are things like equality and justice, how can we look our young people in the eye if we stand silent on the question of genocide and so on, as we've heard today? That would be a complete betrayal of what we say we stand for. So I think if we want to say that we have these values, whatever they are, whether they're British, I don't think they're particularly British, I think they're global values, but if we say those values matter to us, if we say that justice matters, if we say equality matters, if we say people's rights matter, then actually, when it comes to it, we have to stand up and make sure that people are getting those rights. We must make them mean something. I'm not going to talk because I'm not an expert on this question, as I've already said, and so I'm not going to say much more about the issue itself. But I just want us to think about another element, which is our young people, and several people already have talked about how this story is coming to us through social media. That's through photographs, that's through videos, that's through reports, and as we've also heard, what is coming to us is horrific. So our young people, many of our young people are receiving this information on social media without any mediation, without knowing who they can talk to about it, without having a safe space in which to explore things or to express their feelings. And you would like to think, wouldn't you, that schools were a safe space where this kind of issue would get covered, where we would be able to talk to our young people and ensure that they've got the skills to manage their emotions, but also to navigate the stories and the different things they're being told and to try and make sense of it. But I'm afraid in schools, the space for that kind of thing is disappearing. So it's because we've become such an exam-focused system, there is very little space for this kind of, what I would say, real education. Education to me is more than exams, and I think we are letting our children down if we do not give them the space in which to try and make sense of some of this stuff. So I hope that within all the work that you're doing, that you do make some safe spaces for your young people at home, here in the mosque, in the community centres, because they will be trying to make sense of this, because it doesn't make sense to any of us, but talking about it and showing them how they can take action, I think is really important. If you can take action, then you don't feel powerless, and if we all take action, then maybe we can make things change. It's not just our young people, we are all global citizens. Again, all the speakers have said this. I am a British citizen, but I consider myself a citizen of the world. I have a responsibility to people who live everywhere, and whatever rights I think I have a right to, I think everyone has a right to those rights everywhere else. So we do have a duty to speak out and act, and my pledge to you today is I am here to listen, I'm here to take on the ideas that everybody said. I will go back to the National Union of Teachers, I will make sure that my General Secretary hears a report from tonight, but also our Executive, and I will see what we can do through our union to lobby our Parliament, to build support for demonstrations, and to try and make sure that the information about what's happening out there gets out to all our members, to schools everywhere, but also to the wider media. So thank you so much for organising this. This is an amazing turnout, and I feel very humbled to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Kiri Tanks and the National Union of Teachers for standing in solidarity with us today. And being so clear and honest, and I think touching on the point about young people and the youth and our role and importance. And as well, I think this is as much about educating ourselves so that we can go away and take action. So our next speaker is Mark Farmina, and he is the current director of the Burma campaign in the UK.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you tonight. My organisation, Burma Campaign UK, was founded 26 years ago at the request of people in Burma for international support and solidarity in their struggle for human rights and democracy. And one of the very first campaigns that we were involved in then was for the Rohingya, when there was a military attack taking place in 1991, 1992 against the Rohingya, and that drove 250,000 of them into Bangladesh. Now what we've seen then, that took place over a period of months. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen a military offensive on a bigger scale than that, with more people displaced than that, a much, much larger number of people displaced. So I've been at Burma Campaign UK myself for 20 years. I've never seen anything like this before happening in the country. This is unprecedented. A lot of people know about Burma because of the '88 uprising when the students rose up. Many of you will remember perhaps 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago, the monks were marching in the street against the military dictatorship. At those times, there was international outrage about the behaviour of the military cracking down on the protesters in the capital, in Yangon. Now, there's virtually nothing. I've never seen such a weak response in my 20 years either to what is taking place in the country now. This is the worst human rights crisis the country has faced, the worst humanitarian crisis it has faced since 2008, and the response from the international community is incredibly weak. And our government is very weak on human rights generally, is very, very soft on the government and military in Burma. As we've heard, we're providing training to the military that is carrying out these human rights violations. Our organisation has been campaigning against that training since it was launched in 2013, and I'm pleased to tell tonight we're talking about MPs and what they're doing, because the government is still defending that training. I was on the BBC earlier this week with Andrew Mitchell, the Conservative MP, who was saying this £300,000 training in the military is money well spent, and in his next breath he admits it's not actually working very well. But 157 MPs today have released a letter, released it this evening. Krishanara Ali has helped coordinate that. We've been working with her on this. 157 MPs calling on the British government to change its approach to the military, to change its approach to stopping the military training, to mobilise pressure at the United Nations, and to actually start doing something about the situation. Now, the government is not listening to us alone, but if we use our voice to our MPs and our MPs listen to us and they put pressure on the government, we can move them. I've seen it happen before. This is not impossible to change the government's approach to this. We can do it, but it does mean contacting your MP. It does mean writing them letters, emailing them, calling their office. It works, so I would urge all of you to do that, to urge your MP to put more pressure on the government. Unless we put pressure on them, they're going to continue to allow this to happen. Now, the system in Burma today is a complicated one. There's almost like a country with two governments. We had a dictatorship there since the 1960s, and they were under pressure, sanctions, domestic pressure, and they decided they had to reform, but they didn't want to give up their power. So now we have effectively two governments. We have the government led by Aung San Suu Kyi that everyone is talking about, and all the criticism, or almost all the criticism, is focused on. But under the constitution of Burma, what the military did is they handed over responsibility to her for the things they don't care about much. They handed over responsibility for health, education, agriculture, this kind of thing. They kept for themselves independence from the government, control over the police, the security services, the prisons, and control over the civil service. So Aung San Suu Kyi's behaviour is inexcusable. I campaigned for more than a decade for her release from house arrest. I pressured the government, I lobbied, I went around the world calling for her release. I was one of the main people globally campaigning for her freedom. I cannot believe, I'm so disappointed with how she has behaved. I've spoken to her about this myself. She did not seem sympathetic. She refused. I said to her, please go and see for yourself what's going on in northern Rakhine states, Rohingya, and she refused. But the pressure that she is under at the moment, all the criticism focused on her, means the actual man who's doing the shooting, that's literally calling the shots, Min Aung Hlaing, the head of the military, is getting away with it. And we have to, despite our anger, our disappointment for the Western media, every day the articles is, oh, Aung San Suu Kyi this, yeah. So they might feel disappointed, we might feel disappointed. But every time there is an article that only talks about Aung San Suu Kyi, every time people post on Facebook only about Aung San Suu Kyi, it means the head of the military is getting away without the pressure that he deserves. And until people know his name, Min Aung Hlaing, how many people before tonight even heard of him? He's the man that's responsible for everything that has happened in the past 2 weeks. He's the one responsible for thousands of deaths, for the beheadings and shooting of children, for rape and sexual violence, for burning of homes. He's the man. Have you seen his name in a newspaper? Have you heard MPs talking about him? No. We have to change that, because until he feels the pressure, until he feels under threat, until people are talking about him being in the International Criminal Court in The Hague, until we stop supplying him with weapons, he's going to carry on driving out the Rohingya. He's going to carry on with his policy of effective genocide, ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity. We're talking about multiple violations of international law, and he's getting away with it. Aung San Suu Kyi deserves the criticism. The criticism that there's been that I've seen, I can't disagree with it. But we have to focus on Min Aung Hlaing, we have to focus on the military, we have to put pressure on the British government. We have to say to the British government, no more training, no more support, no more softly befriending, no trying to win favours so you can sell them some military equipment despite the arms embargo. Austria and Germany, supplying them with military equipment, Austria and Germany offering them training as well. Next week, in the US Senate, a bill is being tabled which is actually going to propose spending more money and more military cooperation. The US military cooperating more with the Burmese military, even as they're doing what they're doing. We have to change this. We have to change the attitude. Min Aung Hlaing should be a pariah. He should be someone that talks about on level with Pol Pot, on level with Idi Amin, with the other dictators around the world who are so notorious for their human rights violations. And we're going to have to do that, because out in the rest of the world, most people don't know what's going on. They see something in the newspaper one day, the next day it's about North Korea, the next day it's about Syria. They're not paying attention. But those of us who know what's going on, you've heard what's going on, we have the responsibility to do something about it. We have the responsibility to help them, and we can. So I ask all of you, please, make sure you do everything you can, because if you don't do it, nobody else will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the Burma campaign, a call to action. We'll take a short break now for Maghrib prayers. But before you go, just want to let you know, after prayers we have more important speakers left, including someone from Turkey, Hakan Kamul from the Turkish Foundation, Dr. Anasa Tekniki from the Cordoba Foundation, and our local MP, Rahman Ali, will be speaking. Thereafter will be fundraising. I urge you all to come back after prayers, please. We'll resume at 7:50. So we'll take a break now. For those who are not praying, you can stay here and rest. Thank you.